We have to recognize that every day that we're in business, we are at risk to losing that business or a portion of that business to operational risks. And there's many, many of them. And the property management business is full of liability and risk.
Yeah.
When a buyer comes knocking, or when we're looking at an opportunity to contact a buyer, the buyer today may not be around tomorrow for me in my marketplace.
Hello, everyone. Today on the Guidelight podcast, I am super excited to have my dear friend and brother in Christ, Kit Garren. He is going to share a lot of great insight and value with us today. He's got a phenomenal little bio here that I just need to read out, because if I don't read it, I'll mess something up. So I'm going to go start here. But back in 1986, Kit built his own property management company from the ground up, leading it with excellence for more than 3 decades before selling it successfully to Associa in 2019. He's now serving as Vice President of Acquisitions for Rome by Associa. In this role, Kit helps business owners across North America understand what it really takes to maximize value and prepare for a successful sale or transition. Kit's not only a proven entrepreneur and leader, he's also a past president of the National Association of Residential Property Managers and holds multiple industry certifications. His journey gives him a unique lens. He's been in the trenches building, scaling, and selling a business, and now he's guiding others to do the same. You're about to hear insights from someone who knows the process inside and out, and whose wisdom can help you think differently about your own company's future. So, Kit, thank you again for joining us. I'm super excited, and I'm just going to jump right into some of these questions here. But I'd like to start with you on what first drew you into this work, and why does that matter today?
Thanks, Jason. It's great to be here and love talking about this. I am passionate about it, having gone through this experience, and I want to emphasize that the reason I'm here today literally is because the success of the transaction for me and the success of the transition afterwards for my team excited me to say, okay, this can be a very successful opportunity for those of us who build companies. And after the fact, I was given this opportunity to join the team, to serve in this capacity. And even though I really didn't have a need to go into this, I felt excited about it just simply because of the success that we had. And I knew that this story could be retold and recreated many, many times over for other business owners.
That's great. I mean, you and I have talked. I think I had a very similar experience with our transition, and it's just exciting when things go well, isn't it?
It is. Absolutely.
Well, so you wrote an article recently, and I'll be sure to kind of put a link to that somewhere in this podcast, hopefully, is that, you and I were discussing it, and I really, really enjoyed it, but it was about the time factor. You wrote about the time value of money, that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, and how should business owners think about selling now versus holding for a later sale. And in my world and in my own experience, I think that's a big question of, the timing and what variables are at play and what are those things to consider. Because, before I sold, I wasn't even looking to sell. And when I started educating and learning more about what you're going to share today, my eyes just opened up to the possibilities, and I got excited. So share a little bit about that.
Right. Well, I think it was really that what I wrote was born from conversations that I have with owners who have built high quality companies that are producing both satisfaction and revenue. I mean, both of those come together into what we call culture within a business, and that success, if you will, that successful culture, that successful business operation is hard to give up. And there is a bit of there's a hesitancy to want to give that up. And sometimes it shouldn't be given up. Maybe it needs to continue on for a period of time. But let's just say many of us look at that and say, okay, perhaps I can't lead forever. Perhaps I don't have children that I'm going to pass my company to in a legacy situation. And so we realize that there is value represented within this company. And if we have this value that's locked into this company, then how do we release that? And the hesitancy is, well, I'm going to continue to grow my business and increase value, which is fair. But there's three factors, and the time value of money simply meaning that a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. Why? Because of three things. Number one is earning potential of that dollar. Number two is inflation, which works against in opposition to that dollar. Yeah. And then the third thing is risk. Is that dollar going to be available tomorrow? Is it going to be diminished? And what factors could diminish it? So if you look at those three things, both the earning potential of the dollar, the inflation effect on the dollar, and the risk effect on the dollar, or the risk possibility of the dollar, then we have to consider, is this an appropriate time to sell? Is the value there? So that's often, and I want to finish by saying that within this realm, oftentimes owners might feel, well, this is, if I sell the company now, that's all I'm going to ever have, is this what we call a zero-sum proposition, meaning that the dollar that I receive for this company is it, and I'm never going to get another dollar in my life. And there's a problem with that thinking, and that is, again, the investment opportunity, the investment value of that dollar. So we can go into each one of those, but those are that's a conversation I often have with owners, and I think we need to open up the opportunity for them to think beyond just that dollar they receive for the company. What can I do, and how can that grow and expand beyond where I am?
And that's beautiful, and I mean, you and I have had talk, and I kind of wrestle with that a little bit. Even though I was an entrepreneur and I've always wanted to move and grow, in that transaction, I kind of got trapped in that mindset a little bit about the zero sum until, I think I told you, God kind of woke me up and kind of shook me and said, nope, not done with you yet. There's still more work to do. But back to your time value, when you realize you're pulling the value assets out of that business to reinvest it in other ways. I've just seen countless business owners realize that they can multiply that much better, I should say, grow it faster in other avenues than if it stayed tied in the business, over X amount of years. So I think that really speaks to that.
Right.
So another topic you and I've talked about is the risk horizon. So, when it comes to risk, you've pointed out both internal business risks and risk that future buyers, may not be there. Like, how should owners weigh those uncertainties about risks, that risk horizon? Maybe expound a little bit more on that.
Sure. I think they have to be weighed with the backdrop of what the goals and objectives might be. Again, from a perspective, let's say, for instance, I have children that I plan to leave this company with. Well, then, therefore, I'm going to continue to navigate the business risks involved, just like I have for the past 3 decades, for instance, and just continue on. But let's say that I want to unlock that value at some point to sell the company. Then we have to recognize that every day that we're in business, we are at risk to losing that business, or a portion of that business, to operational risks. And there's many, many of them. And the property management business is full of liability and risk. Yeah. So we navigated that on a regular basis. So when a buyer comes knocking, or when we're looking at an opportunity to contact a buyer and say, is this a good time to consider, we have to evaluate those risks. So the risk factors is almost limitless. It could be governmental legislation. It could be
AI,
liability risks, on and on and on.
Yeah.
So it's all of those things, plus my own health, my own ability to continue then working in the business. But then there's one final thing. The buyer today may not be around tomorrow for me in my marketplace. So I have to consider all of those factors.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I threw in there AI, and that'd probably be its own podcast in general, just because that's a huge risk. Everybody's talking about it, and I think that'll be opening some eyes. And probably the next year or two, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at the impact that it has to.
Business disruptors, right? There are disruptors on a regular basis entering the business. Right now, we're in a time when we'll probably see some significant disruption because of this new ability to do things through artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah. Another topic that, maybe our listeners might have heard or maybe not understand, they may not have heard these terms, but the difference between a strategic buyer and a financial buyer. And I think,
Mhm.
you and I have had most experience. That's kind of the most beneficial experience is having a strategic buyer. But you want to explain or just touch on that just a little bit?
Sure. Sure. So the financial buyer is one who is buying your cash flow. One is buying your business cash flow. Really, that's as simple as that. So it could be any widget that you're marketing and selling successfully, and they're buying that opportunity to continue to do that. A strategic buyer is going to be one more of who buys your company because it is complementary to their existing operations. So your widget will be complementary as an addition to their business. Could be something that is going to be compatible with their business, but is very strategic. And those buyers are always looking. In our case, in the property management space where we're buying, we are a private company. And so we are constantly looking for high quality brands within the property management space. And I often tell people it's real simple in my own role. It's a very simple formula. I look for really high quality leaders. And if you follow that leader right behind them, you're going to find a really high quality team running a high quality brand.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So we go looking for the leadership. Once we find those leaders, we know that we're going to find a good brand behind them. And that's what we look for. So we are a strategic buyer in the property management industry.
Right, great, exactly, and we know, sometimes I talk with folks that are looking how they position themselves to be, more, in the appetite of someone that is a strategic buyer versus a financial buyer. And again, that's a whole nother podcast to kind of go down some of those lanes. But that's something I really enjoy having conversations and coaching people around that. But so another topic I know in our industries, me being in insurance, you being in property management, these are very prominent factors when it comes to looking about, considering how you're going to sell and what that means to you. But we've talked about brand strength and reoccurring revenue streams, like reoccurring
Mm,
revenue streams and brand strength, like they influence the valuation in a tremendous way. Share
right.
a little bit about that, in what you see out there in the marketplace, and maybe how one can just position themselves to increase their valuations in those two areas.
Yeah, so let's go back to the very beginning and say, okay, let's understand what our company is. In my opinion, and in my experience, my company represented value to me and future value, an asset that I wanted to see grow. I chose not to be a practitioner. I chose to build a company, and that company would continue on and create value. And I think we have to decide early on what we want to do. And there's nothing wrong with just choosing to be a practitioner,
Yeah.
but that limits the sale value at some point, because when you quit, you're done. All you have is maybe a customer list, and that's it. But let's not go there. Let's talk about the company, those of us who want to build value within our company. So there you've got to build, we call it a brand. A brand is simply a promise. That's what a brand is. A good brand is a promise kept.
Yeah.
And so we want to build good brands, right? Meaning that we're keeping that promise. And so there's an experience that is passed on in the marketplace that says that brand keeps their promise, and we like doing business, and the word spreads and it multiplies. Okay. So we build that, and that creates value then in the marketplace. So when we get to the actual consideration of a sale transaction, what I like to remind folks is that process of building that value began from the very beginning of identifying who we are and what we want to be and what our exit might be. So in the early days, we start that process of building the value that could someday be attractive to in my case, a strategic buyer. That's very, very important, because we're talking about now multiple years of building that brand into a marketable, valuable piece that then releases that value into this multiplier that we talked about. Once we have closed the transaction, now we have assets that we can reinvest into lots of different places, including our own time. And I don't want to forget, we need to talk about including the continuation of our legacy through charitable giving. And I'm really a big advocate of that. And I know you are too. So we need to touch on that either today or another time. But we're releasing all of that into the opportunities to move ahead. So it all begins with, to kind of finish up with that thought, it begins from the very beginning, and that is determining who we want to be. How do we want to create value that's going to be marketable to a strategic buyer? And then in my case, and I would encourage any of your listeners to understand this, that the process of working toward that transaction really is a multiple year process of learning, of creating lots of data points to understand who are the strategic buyers out there. How do I position my leadership teams in such a way that that strategic buyer can benefit from the purchase of my company? What is my in my case, of my management portfolio distributed well across a client base, or is it solely or heavily involved with one or two institutional investors, for instance?
Right.
In that case, we're heavily exposed for the future. But a well diversified client base means good quality products being sold out there over a multiple market. So all of those things you're sort of putting into place and tying up, and then we can't lose sight of the fact that the financial housekeeping needs to be impeccable.
Yeah.
And so, not to go too far down this, Jason, but we often see as a buyer now, we see, and we all do it. We all have done it, and we all did it. We have companies, and we've got a car, and we've got some expenses that we run through the company, maybe a club membership, whatever it might be, and sometimes it's significantly more. Well, cleaning all that up well in advance to make sure, look, I want this financial statement to be very clean, so that the add backs, if you will, when we start looking at valuation, are limited, and we're looking at the financial statement truly of that company.
Yes.
So that's an important aspect too.
Yeah, no, there's, you've talked about several things there that, like you said, it could be a whole nother topic to chase down, but all good. Just, I like how you just kind of touched on, but one I do want to go back to that you mentioned, cause I think it ties into, my last question as we segue into this, is the generosity factor. Again, being faith-based and a lot of our audience, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them have a strong faith and, Judeo-Christian or whatever, but a lot of people understand and have a heart to, they want to give. And we see a world out there that struggles in a lot of ways. If we've been blessed financially on things, we want to be a part and help build our community, build back others, give them hope. And the finances are a great way to do that. You and I spoke a little bit here recently when we were talking about how when you sell, the generosity, and even just being able to multiply that generosity that we can give back in our communities. Talk a little bit about that, because I think you and I both have experienced some things like that, but to let our listeners know the beauty of that picture of being able to help others. And this isn't just about us; it's about our communities that we serve and the things that are dear to us.
Oh man, I'm so passionate about this because from my own perspective as a Christ follower, I could tell you that when I give, it just multiplies, and it's impossible to outgive God, as is often said, and that sounds almost trite, but it's so true. When we when we understand that giving releases a joy inside of us, and then we see the multiplier when we give well, how that multiplies and changes lives. Most of us who are entrepreneurs who started companies, ran companies, we love, really the big reason we did it is we love to create and we love to see people thrive, right? I love to see our teams thrive. And so when we give, and just like back then when we saw people thrive and leadership grow within the ranks, if you will, of our teams, then giving does the same thing. It just releases that opportunity. When we see the difference that God will make in the lives of others when I'm giving to His kingdom work, it's beyond description, honestly, but it is truly joyful. And I'm so thankful that He taught me this a number of years ago, so that we can now, in the autumn, moving into the winter of our life, that we can really enjoy these last days just watching Him multiply those funds. So it's really sort of an infinite return on investment. I mean, you can't really measure it, but it's wonderful to watch.
Well, I know you've done a great job in so many facets of what we've covered here. I guess I want to close this out with kind of the idea of legacy and timing. We keep talking about timing, this thing, but the legacy aspect of it. So you and I have shared about, starting with the end in mind. If you're a business owner, wanting to make sure that legacy is intact. We've talked about building team, building culture. There may be businesses out there that, are saying, man, I don't have a deep bench on leadership. My culture is struggling in this. And I feel like, my heart is for some of those business owners, because I've been there and I've had to go through those journeys of re-strengthening culture, re-solidifying your brand, to deliver on those promises. And so I think there's some business owners that may think they want to sell. You and I talked about John Warlow's book, Built to Sell. It's a great story about a business owner who thought he wanted to sell, but realized he didn't have that great of an asset to sell. So it's his journey of just really kind of, shaping that. And I guess maybe expound on that about what it takes to, and it doesn't have to take 10 years. You can really sharpen your legacy by just honing in on a few things and like team leadership. Maybe share a little bit about that, like how your experience has been in that arena, or maybe you've seen other businesses, in that situation and how they've come through to the other side in a great way.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that I don't think we're ever quite at that goal
True.
of being
Yeah.
this is perfect. The operation is running flawlessly.
Yeah.
No, look, it's flawed. We're a bunch of flawed people running a business, and things happen. So
Yeah,
don't be discouraged.
when I read John Warlow's
First thing,
book, when I read Built to Sell, I was like, man, if it was only that clean cut, if it was only that clean cut.
so my first thing would be to encourage and say, you know what, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That we're working toward the goal. We may not fully reach it, and so don't sweat it. Just get there. But really, I think it's a matter of it's everything we've talked about. It's number one, identifying what is our legacy? What do we want our legacy to look like? Being intentional. There's a great book out there also that you may be familiar with called The Intentional Legacy.
Yes.
It's more on a personal level, but I think we can apply it toward everything because our business becomes very personal if we're doing this for a significant period of our lives and investing a lot into it. So we be intentional about that. What do we want it to look like? How are our teams going to remember us if we do exit through a sale? And will the style of the company that we created continue on like it has been? And the answer to that is not completely,
right?
And that's okay.
Yes.
But is it going to be for the good? That's what I want to make sure. It's going to be for the good of the marketplace, the good of the teams, the good of both the customer and the client, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think it's that. And then again, I want to remind ourselves that we're being released. We're releasing funds. We're releasing our time. We're releasing our future to other additional opportunities that are multifaceted to see what we have started continue in broader ways that we never thought possible, perhaps before. And that it's not the end. When we sell, it's not the end. You and I laugh about the fact that we're not just going to go play golf 5 days a week or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
That's not my calling.
No.
So I want to take what God has given me as a steward. Now he's released me from that stewardship, and he wants me to multiply now in more ways that he's giving me stewardship over many other areas that I couldn't have time for before. And that's what I love about the legacy.
Well, I think we can't sum it up better there. So I appreciate that, Kit. I mean, and like I said, we're definitely going to have to do this again because you and I have already talked about a bunch of stuff like, man, we need to talk about this. So there's a lot out there. I so much appreciate your time, appreciate your friendship. And I wouldn't even bring it up because it would take us down a rabbit trail, but there's definitely some other stories I love for you to have our listeners hear. You've got a rich, deep, you got your own legacy of a lot of experiences in life that I think our listeners would benefit from. So I definitely hope to have you back. So listeners out there, if you found value in this, we just encourage you to reach out, connect with us or connect with Kit if you're in the property management space. Kit, tell everyone how they can reach out to you if they want to connect, if they're in that space.
Sure. Love to. Well, if they're out there in the property management space and they want to have a conversation, I love having conversations. And it's just this kind of a conversation. We talk about all the possibilities and whether or not this is the right fit. So they can reach me simply by calling straight to my mobile or text me. And it's 828-779-5504. Or they can contact us at romepm.com guidelight.com.
Well, hey, everybody, y'all have been listening to the Guidelight podcast today. Again, as always, we're just here to try to bring insight and value into some arenas around your building your business, growing your business, and especially for those that are in maybe the fourth quarter or even the last 2 minutes of the game, and they're looking to transition. And there's a lot of things at play there. So we hope to bring you folks like Kit and other folks that can maybe just shed some light, and we're definitely here to help. So, also, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that kind of jazz. So those call to actions. But hey, just want to thank you for your time. Get out there and win the day and be blessed.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Kit.